Well, it's David Krayden here with Krayden's Right and Stand on Guard. We've got a bit of a controversy going on in the House of Commons right now. There's a point of order because the Speaker is not starting question period on time. And Andrew Scheer, Saskatchewan MP, former leader of the opposition, just stood up and said the
After
Speaker obviously doesn't
consultations
know
at
the
the
rules.
table,
So let's
it is
listen.
important for members to understand that we have dérogé de cette habitude de commencer.
That we have moved away from starting exactly on time.
Le président, la présidence va faire cette déclaration.
The Speaker will make a statement. It's not my intention to make this a habit. But according to the standing orders, I do have the opportunity of starting oral questions after my statement.
The honourable member from Regina.
The Speaker ought to know when rules are not followed, when there is a derogation from a rule, when that is pointed out to the Speaker then enforces the rules. These standing orders are the property of the House. It's up to the House to decide when we're not going to follow a rule or when we're going to change a rule. This is a standing order that the House has adopted. You are a servant of the House. You should follow the standing order.
I'd like to thank the honourable member from Regina Capel for pointing out the standing orders, and indeed he is correct. There are written standing orders. However, there is a long tradition in this House that the Speaker has the ability to making sure. Can I ask the honourable member to please allow me to finish as I have the floor at this time? I'll be happy to recognize the honourable member for a point of order. It is really important that we understand that the Speaker does have this ability to make a statement. We will have full oral questions at the end of this statement from the Speaker. It is an important message, which I think members would appreciate hearing, because it gives an indication as to how the Speaker is going to be proceeding in the months and years to follow. Colleagues,
as promised before the constituency week,
order the honourable member from Carleton.
Every day in this House, the opposition has the occasion to respond to the actions of and hold the government accountable for its actions on behalf of Canadians. That happens at 2:15 every single Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. That is not a may, that is not a possible, that is a shall.
There's a real problem with
nothing in
the
the clause
Speaker.
that creates
Real
question
problem.
period in the standing orders that allows the Speaker to arbitrarily change the time in order to give a speech. I will note that the Speaker has a plethora of occasions to stand on his feet and make any point he wants or any declaration he likes. He does not need to do it in the middle of the sacred period during which we hold the government to account. Now, I see, no, if I'm Mr. Speaker, if I may, this is the first time in all of my years here that I have seen a Speaker interrupt question period to make a speech. I've never seen it. I've never seen it. And I furthermore, the fact that you've risen to your feet in order to impose apparently a series of guidelines that are not approved by the Board of the Internal Economy or voted on by the House of Commons, and that you're doing it in violation of one of the existing rules that is already in place, suggests a very serious and unusual departure from the normal way in which Parliament exists. The government is here to serve Parliament, not the other way around. We ask that you allow us to proceed the question period and you make your statement afterwards.
This guy is a problem. This new speaker is really out to lunch. And look at this, eh? They're having a little secret consultation. What is the speaker up to? He clearly doesn't know what to do in this job. Half the time he's standing up looking around like he doesn't know where he is. He doesn't know half the time who is next in line to ask questions. He can't identify people. And now he wants to take over question period. I want to hear some
I'd
comments
like to
about
thank
this.
the
What
honourable
do
member
you
for
think
Carleton
about this?
for his intervention. I would like to inform the House, though, this is not the first time that the Speaker has interrupted the proceedings to make a statement from the chair between the point of SO31s and oral questions. Colleagues, so that everybody can understand this very clearly, my immediate predecessor, for example, has done this at least on 2 occasions. It also has been done by speakers in the past. I'm going to continue with this statement. I think it's important for all members to understand this, and I'd like to reassure the member from Carleton and all members that there are going to be no new standing orders that would require the approval of you members. But we're talking about, I'd invite you to listen to this statement. I would invite you to listen to this statement in order to be able to improve order and decorum in this House. Come. Come et l'avis premier avant.
As promised before the constituency week, the chair would like to make a statement on order and decorum in the House. In a very simple way, order and decorum are signs of respect for each other and for the institution. Respect, which is necessary for productive debate in a deliberative assembly. It is, in fact, fundamental to Parliament's ability to fulfill its constitutional role.
I decided to stand for Speaker because in the 8 years that I've been a member, and prior to that as a keen follower of parliamentary proceedings, I've noticed a deterioration in the collective decorum in this place. It is important to note that this deterioration was not inevitable. It is not a natural outgrowth of the advent of social media. We can choose to conduct ourselves differently. I suspected other members felt the same way, and during the many discussions that I held recently with members from all sides of the House, confirmed this feeling. Decorum and disorder was the one issue that was most often mentioned to me in the one-on-one exchanges that I had, and not just in passing. Perhaps most importantly of all, members felt that bad behavior dishonors not only ourselves as elected members of Parliament, but also dishonors Canadian democracy.
On October 3rd, 2023, when I was invited to take the chair for the first time, I said, we need to make sure that we treat each other with respect and that we show Canadians an example, because there can be no dialogue unless there is mutual understanding of respect. There can be no ability to pursue arguments, to make points be heard, unless we all agree to extend to each other that sense of respect and decorum. I meant it then. I mean it now.
Members should not be surprised by my statement today. Not long ago, on May 8th, 2023, my predecessor rightly said, in a ruling on decorum, which can be found at page 14,090 of the Bates.
Yes,
quote,
Fergus has an
the
ethics
rules and
violation.
practices governing order and decorum are intended in part to
Dirty
ensure that
Martinez.
proceedings are conducted in a
Your
civil,
comment, yes, he did.
courteous, and respectful manner. In particular, members are expected to address each other through the chair and to avoid making any offensive or disruptive remarks. For example, stating directly or indirectly that a colleague is a liar or has lied is unacceptable, unquote. The honourable member from has raising a point of order.
He
I would
doesn't
usually
even
ask
know
if
where,
there's a
who he's
filibuster
talking to.
but for the purposes of planning, I'm wondering if the speaker might indicate to the House how long he expects to continue.
The member, this should continue.
This is totally
for
unprecedented.
It's not a point of order first, thank you. But I will let members know that it will continue for the time that it will take. It shouldn't be too long.
Jackass. Who are they find this guy?
So after
This is another bloody embarrassment. First a Nazi-loving speaker, and now a guy who wants to take over the government.
and where views are strongly held and vigorously defended. While the chair must allow the widest range of individual expression possible, members are expected to be mindful of their words and behaviors within the realm of what would be considered parliamentary. Je réitère les propos du président.
I wish to echo the words of Speaker Milliken, which can be found at page 3719 of the October 5, 2006 debates, and I quote, "But the exercise of that freedom of speech ought to be based on the underlying principle of respect to the House and to other
Oh my
members.
God.
Conduct should not cause a disruption to proceedings." It would be an understatement to say that we have been plagued in recent weeks by what any observer would have to admit is an unusually noisy chamber, particularly during question period. Some of the disorder is being triggered by questionable language or provocative statements, but much of it also appears to be generated by interruptions, interjections, or other demonstrations, actions that seem to be designed to drown out or plainly disrupt those asking questions
Where's this guy
or
been
those
for the last
answering them.
50 years? But this is how
But when
question
the
period has
noise
always been run.
reaches levels where no one, not even the speaker, can hear what is being said,
This
the
guy is a
House
total
as a
clown.
whole loses some credibility. So I appeal to all honorable members for cooperation. I will continue to try to give members wide latitude in expressing their points of view. But I ask for all members' assistance in ensuring that we can all hear the member who's been recognized and who has the floor, end quote.
Yeah, Gene Baker. Sounds like a
Going forward,
kindergarten class.
I
Yeah,
will be fair
that's what it.
and will ensure that all members, regardless of which side of the House they sit on,
And this guy's
can
the
freely
headmaster.
speak their minds, vigorously hold the government to account, challenge each other's ideas, and thoroughly consider public business. As your speaker, I will equally be looking for ways of improving the overall decorum in the House, and I will be dogged in that pursuit.
I commit
How nice.
to doing this as your servant and to enforce the rules that you yourselves have given the House on your behalf. I will do so with humility and also with an outreached hand. Within our purview, all the chair occupants will work collectively to ensure that the rules of order and decorum are respected, applied consistently, and to the same standards. As another one of my predecessors, the member for Regina Capel, stated on December 12, 2012, at pages 13,215 and 13,216 of debates, quote, "My task as Speaker is to ensure that the intensity of feelings expressed around some issues is contained within the bounds of civility without infringing on the freedom of speech that members enjoy. The chair tries to ensure that our rules are adhered to in a way that encourages mutual respect. However, all members will recognize that ultimately the speaker must depend on their collective self-discipline to maintain order and to foster decorum. My authority to enforce the rules depends on the cooperation of the House. Our
Just
electors
astounding.
expect all members to make greater efforts to curb disorder and unruly behavior.
Or else
So
what?
I urge all members to reflect on how best to return to the House to the convivial, cooperative atmosphere I know all of us would prefer." Unquote. Étant
Yeah,
donné l'esprit collégial
prostrate
Because
to the
of the
liberals is
collegial
what he really
character
means.
of the House and the broad privileges enjoyed by its
Guy's a
members,
farce.
no one, not even the Speaker, can act unilaterally to improve the level of decorum in the chamber. Despite my own strong individual determination to maintaining the dignity and decorum of the House, ultimately, those efforts will come to naught without members themselves taking responsibility for their behavior and conduct and showing their own personal efforts in comporting their business in an appropriate and civil manner. I will therefore need your help in order to succeed.
observed over the years as a member,
Yes, they
the following
could.
issues have deteriorated and need to be
Maria
addressed.
Aversa, yes, they could all
First,
stand up and leave.
excessive, disruptive, and loud heckling
There would still be a
must
quorum
be
in the
toned
House.
down. Occasional heckling has always been a part of our proceedings, and a light-hearted or clever comment will often enhance debate rather than detract from it.
This guy is
However,
incredible.
Far too often, heckling is boorish and rude,
Oh,
designed to intimidate, insult, or drown out others. Members have a
would
right to be
anybody
heard
believe
and
this?
to hear the proceedings going on around them. The frequent and time-consuming disorder it creates must stop. Excessive
Oh,
interruptions must be curtailed.
must stop.
Deuxièmement, bien que je sois
Second, while I'm committed to protecting the individual privilege of freedom of speech necessary for our debates, too frequently our ideas and thoughts are expressed in provocative terms, leading to tense exchanges that harm the necessary collegiality for our work. We have in the past had members likening their colleagues to Mussolini, or calling each other racists, or shouting obscenities.
You can't call anyone a
Latitude
Mussolini
in expressing one's point of view will be given, but questionable language and
unless you're a liberal, of course. Then
unnecessarily
you can call everybody
provocative
Nazi.
statements will not be tolerated.
Finally, the growing tendency to make pointed criticisms in a way that is unnecessarily personal and designed to denigrate, bully, elicit an emotional reaction, or to attack the integrity of the person introduces a toxicity to our proceedings which hampers our ability to get things done. This includes coming up with fake titles for members in order to mock them, or comments that questions their courage, their honesty, or their commitment to their country.
Who the
I would
hell does
also
this guy
include
think he
comments
is?
designed to draw attention to the absence of members as a mean of embarrassing them, even though this is against our
Oh,
rules.
we can't embarrass
As many of my
MPs.
predecessors have underscored, there
No,
are multiple places members must go to fulfill their duties.
this
I
guy
will
is
point
the
out
living embodiment
there
of
are
snowflake.
examples of
He's just,
these
he is
sorts of
totally
comments on all sides of the
melting
House.
away.
Insofar
Just
as personal attacks can
everybody
be
is going to
limited,
be so
I will use
upset.
whatever tools I have at my disposal to do so. Les problèmes que j'ai soulignés se manifestent surtout
The above-mentioned issues tend to be displayed most prominently during statements by members and daily question period. This is unfortunate because this is when our proceedings receive the most attention from those watching or from the public in the galleries, and from which clips
You
are
only
most
wish.
widely circulated on social media. These are the issues I will focus most of my efforts on resolving. While the House is master of its own proceedings and the Speaker its servant, the Chair has the authority to enforce rules of debate to maintain order and decorum so that the House may conduct its business in an orderly fashion. The standing orders of the House state explicitly that the Speaker shall preserve order and decorum and decide questions of order. This duty, which extends to the other chair occupants, carries with it a wide-ranging authority covering matters as diverse as the behavior and attire of members, the conduct of proceedings, the rules of debate, and disruptions on the floor of the chamber and its galleries.
As such, any challenge to the authority of the chair by refusing to respect a call to order, to withdraw language ruled to be unparliamentary, to cease irrelevance and repetition in debate, or to stop interrupting a member who has the floor, can be addressed through recourse to a number of options. For instance, the chair may recognize another member or refuse to recognize a member until the offending remarks are retracted and the member apologizes
This is more
immediately in
Trudeau's
person or at a later
authoritarianism.
time in writing to the Speaker.
Trudeau
As
gave
a
him a
last
speech.
resort,
No
the chair
question.
may name a member the most severe disciplinary power at the Speaker's disposal. In the days and weeks ahead, as I proceed as outlined above, I will continue my discussions with individual members as well as with House officers in the different parties to see how we can join forces in our collective objective to improve the decorum in our proceedings. Je remercie les députés.
I thank all members for their attention and invite them to reflect on the statement I've made today. I also wish to indicate that members are always free to come and see me if they wish to discuss the matter further.
Merci les membres.
I thank the
Nice.
members.
This guy, if he wasn't so damn inept, we might begin to take him seriously, but it's impossible to take anyone who's this inept, this incompetent, seriously at all. But unfortunately, it looks like he's following Justin Trudeau's marching orders.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Amazing.
After 8 long years of this Prime Minister, he's not worth the cost, and especially in Quebec, where the inflation rate has hit 4.8%, higher than elsewhere in Canada. After 8 years of inflationary deficits, the solution proposed by the Liberals and the Bloc is to significantly increase costs through a tax on gas and diesel that will increase the cost of every product that's transported. Will they put an end to these inflationary policies so that Quebecers can buy food and gas and housing? The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We have no lessons to take from the Conservatives. What the Conservatives are proposing for the Canadians listening to us is to cut services, cut investments, and cut the future of Canada. We have a plan to help Canadians prosper in the 21st century economy. And what Canadians are realizing is that the Conservatives are too dangerous for our country. Thank you.
After these saboteurs,
The Honourable Leader
I
of the
can't even
Opposition.
control the sound in
I
there
will
anymore.
ignore
It's just
that
a
members'
bloody
lack
circus.
of decorum and his emotionally charged approach to focus on Canadians. Because I can actually take it. I can take the debate and have it out in the open. Mr. Speaker, you talked about cuts. Canadians are making cuts in their own lives. We now have a new phenomenon in Canada, which is the middle class homeless. We used to just have young people living in their parents' basements. Now we have parents moving into their children's basements. Will the Prime Minister reverse the inflationary policies that doubled housing costs and are forcing seniors to move into their kids' basements just to avoid going homeless?
Mr. Speaker, I thank the honourable colleague for the question. Canada has a AAA credit rating, the lowest debt to GDP ratio in the G7, and low unemployment. And in addition, we will always be there to support the middle class, Mr. Speaker, whether it is 6 million old age seniors with the old age security benefit, whether it is 11 million Canadians with the grocery rebate, whether it is 4 million Canadians with the business supports, Mr. Speaker. What we do on this side of the House is invest in Canadians to build a stronger economy day after day, year after year, and we will continue on that course. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Looks like Justin is too cowardly to show up again. He's skipping question period again.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Incompetent rating
Just gave a
agencies
speech
mean
to the
absolutely
Speaker.
nothing to the quote unhoused seniors who say that for affordable housing in Metro Vancouver, that the only thing that turns up is nothing, nothing, and nothing. Nor does it mean anything to, and I quote again, this is even from the CBC, living in his broken down car, homeless man says he has until Thursday to move. We have both nurses and carpenters living in parking lots after 8 years of this Prime Minister doubling housing costs. Will they stop driving up the cost of living so that Canadians can house, feed, and heat their families?
The Honourable Minister.
Very much, Mr. Speaker. And here's the truth for seniors. Fixing the
Oh,
global
and
inflation
this piece of
problem
baggage
is not
again.
going to be fixed by cutting dental support to 3.5 million seniors. And that's what the leader of the opposition would do. On top of that, Mr. Speaker, to get to the tens of billions of dollars of cuts he's talking about, it would mean cuts to our healthcare system. It would mean making sure, unfortunately, that the investments like we saw
The
in
worst
BC
healthcare
to
system in the
transform our
world.
health system won't happen. What does that mean, Mr. Speaker? It doesn't mean just poor health outcomes. It means more costs in the future. It means a less resilient country, and it means a much worse future for our seniors. That's what he's peddling, Mr. Speaker.
Got to comment on that one
Then I
later.
have shifted.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Actually, this government that's promising over $10 billion of cuts right now because they suddenly woke up and realized that they were bankrupt. When we were in office, we actually managed to balance the budget while growing healthcare spending every single year. In fact, growing it faster than the current government. But today, the biggest threat to the health of Canadians is homelessness. People are losing their homes because this Prime Minister has doubled the cost of housing. Will he realize, with people living in parking lots, that after 8 years, he's just not worth the cost?
Mr. Speaker, unlike the party opposite,
Then I have missed.
we don't balance budgets on the backs of Canadians. On the contrary, Mr. Speaker, we invest in Canadians. Let me give you one example, Mr. Speaker. Lifting almost 500,000 children out of poverty with the Canada Child Benefit. And every single time there's an opportunity to support Canadians, Mr. Speaker, what does the other side of the House do? They vote against. Colton, that is not the way in which we will build a strong economy.
Once again, I'd like to remind members to please conduct themselves in a way that is appropriate. And I'll also ask members to please keep the voices down so that the speaker can hear at least what is going on. If not, the members would ask a question. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the member is right about one thing. They don't balance the budget on the backs of Canadians. They run massive inflationary deficits on the backs of Canadians. On another matter, Mr. Speaker, our hearts were broken to see a hospital in Gaza struck by a missile. Disinformation peddled by Hamas and regurgitated by CBC was then amplified by the Prime Minister. Does he agree with President Biden that the offending missile originated with terrorists in Gaza?
Then I have Minister.
The Honourable Minister.
Speaker, our government has been unequivocal in condemning the terrorist attacks of Hamas against Israeli citizens. We are also adamant that attacks on civilians are wrong. We call on all parties to observe international law. Our hearts go out to the innocent Palestinian victims that have died as a result of this attack, and we will continue to work with partners around the world to call for a humanitarian corridor. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Did not answer the question, but what else is new?
The Honourable Leader of Bellechampre.
All right, gotta make a comment here. Aren't you sick of seeing successive health ministers stand up and go on and on about these wonderful healthcare system we have? And we all know it's broken. It doesn't work. You can keep funding it and keep funding it, and it doesn't work. Why do you think so many Canadians go to the US for operations? Have you looked lately at how long it takes to get something as simple as a knee replacement? Have you seen how long it takes to get very simple operations? People are dying for this healthcare system that is supposedly free, but costs more than private health insurance in the United States and is virtually inaccessible, at least if you want to survive your illness. You're going to die waiting for healthcare in Canada. And we've got these morons who keep standing up and saying, oh, it's going to cut a few dollars from this wonderful healthcare system, because it's not a workable healthcare system. It is not a good healthcare system. It's one of the worst in the world. But people think it's free, and it's not. Socialized medicine is not free. And these liberals have been selling, peddling this lie for generations.
Have a humanitarian corridor, and we are there to defend the rights of all civilians in that zone. The Honourable Leader or Member for Bellechambly. The United Nations cannot be heard alone. They need friends and credibility. Am I given to understand that the Prime Minister over the last 11 days has not spoken once to the President of the United States? In the countries neighboring Quebec, they say you have to walk the talk, or les bottines doivent suivre les babines.
Not sure what the hell he's talking about.
We need to go beyond good intentions. Should the Prime Minister not consider walking the talk?
The Prime Minister is not in the House again. So and this is Karina
Many
Gould again. What a
innocent
joke this woman
victims
is. This is the one, remember, who wanted to
fallen
excise
in
the history
region.
of the Liberals
The Prime
inviting
Minister
a
and
Nazi to
Minister of Foreign
Parliament
Affairs have
and
been in
having
contact with
two
allies,
standing ovations. This is the one who wanted to
with
excise that from
stakeholders in the
history.
region. We
This
are
is how
there to play a leadership role
authoritarian
and a
and
collaborative role
dastardly
in
these
order
liberal
to help
cabinet
resolve this
ministers are.
conflict.
And look at her stand out there blithely.
The Honourable
Again,
Member for
avoiding
Burnaby
the
South.
answer.
Before Thanksgiving, the Minister of Industry said prices
No,
for
and this
groceries
guy
are
is a
coming
joke.
down. Canadians just needed to check out grocery flyers. But now the Prime Minister or the Minister is backtracking, saying, well, he's not sure because the grocery CEO's plans are too secret. If the Minister can't get answers, then we will. Will the Minister of Grocery
Yeah, you're in
Flyers
bed with
support
Justin
our
Trudeau.
motion
You're in
to
bed with the
summon
Liberals.
the
Don't give me
grocery
this crap.
CEOs back to Parliament again?
Oh yeah, we're here.
Then I have ministre.
Keep propping Justin
I'd like
up.
to thank the member for the question, Mr. Speaker. I'm really surprised in a way
Oh,
of that question,
champ.
Mr.
Hey,
Speaker.
really
We did
surprised.
one thing that has never been done in Canadian history. We called the 5 CEOs of the groceries in Ottawa, Mr. Speaker, and we expressed the frustration of 40 million Canadians, Mr. Speaker, about the price of grocery. I would enjoy all members of this House to give the same message that I give. Make sure you help Canadians and help us to stabilize price in Canada. That's what Canadian expects.
Yeah, you're right.
Then I have
He's
The Honourable
creating
Member for Burnaby South.
Clearly,
scarcity in the
plan
grocery
to
store.
ask them nicely is not working.
That's right.
On va résumer. Un
Let's
Oh,
summarize.
tough.
One day,
Get
the
tougher
Minister
with them.
says
Let's not
that
have anything to
they need
buy
to
in the
check
grocery
prices
store.
in flyers. But now they don't know CEO's plans to stabilize prices because their plans are too secret. It's very clear that the minister doesn't have a plan, so we can give him one. We tabled a new motion to force CEOs of large grocery chains to come back to appear before committee. Will the government support it? Yes or no?
And you think this jerk worries about the price of
Then I have
groceries?
ministre.
The Honourable
Has he
Minister.
ever worried about it? No.
Je suis
Mr. Speaker, I'm glad to hear the question from the leader of the NDP. Not only is that what we proposed, but I wrote to the chair of the committee to ask the chair to invite the CEOs of large grocery chains in Canada to share their plan with Canadians. So I'm glad to hear his question because we are the ones who asked the chair of the parliamentary committee to ask the CEOs to come and appear before Canadians.
Oh, he's so glad
Then I have
about it.
député de Thornhill.
The Honourable Member for Thornhill.
The government is saying that they have not been briefed on verified intelligence confirmed by the President of the United States that has led to the retraction of media reports around the world about yesterday's explosion by IRGC-backed terrorists that killed innocent civilians in Gaza.
Jackhead.
After 8 years, is the
I
relationship
like
with our
Melissa. She's
closest
good.
allies, our Five Eyes partners, so damaged that they don't even share with Canada what they have already told the rest of the world?
Yeah. Question for Serena Studerman, who just sent in a comment, says, hi, David. Can this bum be ousted? Which one? Which bum do you mean? Do we mean the speaker? Do we mean Trudeau?
The situation
Which
in
bum?
Gaza is a tragedy. The loss of Palestinian lives is absolutely horrifying. This is an unthinkable act, and it's imperative that innocent Palestinians be protected, and that international law be upheld. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
What a non-answer. What did they, Trudeau said yesterday the Israelis were responsible. They can't even acknowledge that?
They can no longer run large permanent deficits without fear. After 8 long years, this prime minister added more debt than every government between 1867 and 2015 combined, creating 40-year highs in inflation and the fastest interest rate hikes ever. There is a massive fear of a looming mortgage default crisis if they don't balance the budget now. He's just not worth the cost. Will the Prime Minister stand up today and support our common sense, fiscally responsible motion to bring in balanced budgets so Canadians can keep their homes?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, my honourable colleague talks about fear. There is also fear among Canadians that the Conservatives are going to cut programs that they rely on. Mr. Speaker, this week, the Canada Child Benefit checks will arrive at Canadians' doors, Mr. Speaker. And in the members' riding in Calgary Forest Lawn, that means that individuals will get up to $10,000 lowered from their child care fees. Mr. Speaker, there are also 400,000 families in Calgary Forest Lawn that get the Canada Child Benefit checks.
Yeah. They're having audio problems in the House today. It's just incredible. But, you know, we can't hear Fergus.
From Dufferin Caledon.
See, he doesn't even know
that interest rates were going to remain low, and Canadians believed him, so they went out, they bought homes, and they took out mortgages. But after 8 years of liberal inflationary deficits, interest rates are at a 30-year high, and many Canadian families are now not finding they can't pay their mortgage. In fact, the Business Council of Canada just said governments can't permanently run deficits without fear. So will this finance minister stop running her inflationary deficits so interest rates will come down and Canadian families won't lose their homes?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Speaker, and of course, allow me to correct the record. There are actually 400,000 families in Alberta collecting the Canada Child Benefit checks, Mr. Speaker. Those checks are coming out this week. And Mr. Speaker, under what the Conservatives are proposing, they would have those checks completely removed. They would be cutting those supports for Canadians. Mr. Speaker, I will remind you that while we continue to support Canadians, we are also running the lowest deficit here in Canada among all G7 countries.
All G7, yes.
Dufferin Caledon.
Mr. Speaker, there's only one cut that we're going to make. We're going to cut about 80 members from that side of the House when we form a common sense conservative government. And when we do that, we will address the concerns like the ship worker in Vancouver who's paying $7,500 a month for a mortgage. Wow. And what do they say? They talk about a AAA credit rating. How out of touch. They're gaslighting Canadians. Will they cut these inflationary deficits and get interest rates under control? Yes or no?
The answer will be yes or no. What for?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm very pleased to hear a member of the opposition speak about C-SPAN. It is a very important member of the business community in my riding of North Vancouver.
Oh, there's another guy waving his fingers
the Prime
at you.
Minister to announce the commitment to build an additional 18 Coast Guard vessels worth almost $16 billion, which will provide well-paid employment for the employees at C-SPAN for decades to come. Mr. Speaker, we are going to create good economic jobs. We are going to ensure economic opportunity for
electric
Canadians,
cars.
and we are going to ensure affordability at the same time.
Joker.
I'm going to ask once again for members to please refrain from taking the floor when they are not been recognized by the chair, and to leave the questions so that they can be answered, so that colleagues.
They're cutting the sound out. You notice that? It's like they're intentionally cutting out the sound.
In the coming months, we expect to see a wave of mortgage renewals.
right.
RBC is going to renew 41%
Gotta
of
make
its
it.
mortgages, but it's going to be difficult with interest rates that keep rising. We're seeing inflation on mortgage costs reaching over 30% a month. After 8 years of this prime minister, nothing's going right. Will he explain to people how they're going to pay their mortgages and not end up in the street? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Mr. Speaker, yesterday, Statistics Canada gave us good news. Inflation went down again here in Canada.
Yes, you believe that? I don't.
Our government
Do you believe
continues
that
to work
3.8%
to help
inflation rate? I
Canadians
do
that
not
are
believe
having
it.
trouble
I
making
think
ends meet.
StatsCan is cooking the books.
In this house,
Anyway, I'm going to shut her up for a minute. Do you all remember the 2015 election and the idiots running the Conservative campaign at the time came out with this slogan about Justin Trudeau, he's just not ready? Remember that? How inane, how stupid, how incredibly dumb that was. Is he ready now? He's had 8 years of experience and he's worse than ever. What a dumb. Now they're saying he's not worth the cost. Well, no, not worth the cost. But we really need our heads examined to have allowed the man to get there in the first place, because he clearly was never going to be ready. He's not ready today to be anything but a bad actor. And he continues to skip question period because he has nothing but contempt for Parliament, for democracy, for the House of Commons, for Parliament, for the people of Canada. But he's continuing to thumb his nose at everybody. And now he shoves a speech in front of the speaker and says, hey, you don't like it here? We're going to discipline you. You don't like it here? Don't complain. You don't like what we're saying? Don't upset anybody. What's that going to be? Malinformation? These people are not only sorely inept and corrupt, they're tyrannical. And when you're watching this with me today, and I'll shut up in a minute, but doesn't this give you the sense of living in a third world country? Doesn't it give you the sense that we're living in the third world? Because it's like a declining, deteriorating third world state. In fact, a state that is basically losing its governance. It's run by a bunch of clowns who are not capable of doing their jobs. And they stick a speaker in there now who's saying nobody better complain too loudly in this house or there's going to be discipline.
I'd like to ask for the member, the minister answers the question, I'd like to ask the member from Signal Hill to please wait his turn to be recognized by the chair to take the floor. The Honourable Minister.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
L'honorable collègue sait que le cause de changement.
My honourable colleagues know that climate change is caused by greenhouse gas emissions, and we're going to reduce those emissions in every sector of the economy.
Well, Billy,
we have a
Billy Mustang comments. Third world.
Greenhouse
this is
gas
the seventh level of hell.
And
That's
to
good.
grow
That's
an
good.
economy that will be
You can't argue with that, Billy.
in an economy that will be low in carbon. And that's what we're going to continue to do. The honourable member for Repentigny. Canada is going to become a worldwide driver for oil production 2024 thanks to Trans Mountain. Trans Mountain is going to enable Canada to break
we were.
oil production records and
that would be a bad thing according
records.
to this idiot.
Taxpayers are paying for Trans Mountain, and it's costing us $30.9 billion. $30.9 billion is almost $800 a person, including babies. The Liberals are charging us $800 each to pollute more. Not to mention subsidies and the costs of natural disasters.
There are no
dare
subsidies
the Liberals ask
to fossil
Quebecers
fuel
to
companies.
pay to pollute
That is a lie.
more.
No subsidies. She's complaining about a pipeline that's never going to get built thanks to the Liberals.
I thank my colleague for her question, but I'm wondering why she's not talking about what the government has done recently. We recently announced the biggest investment in the history of Quebec called Northvolt. That's going to make batteries for electric vehicles. My colleague should have focused on that issue because not only will Quebec be a
It is
champion
painful to
of
listen
the
to.
car industry. It's going to be a champion of the green economy. That's what we're doing.
It's become a parody. Question period has really become a parody
Over
of
and over,
itself.
this Liberal NDP government promised interest rates would not go up. But after 8 miserable years of this Prime Minister, Canadians know that is not true. Mortgage defaults and forced home sales are on the rise. Lindsay is one of hundreds who wrote to me to tell me about her skyrocketing mortgage rate. She's paying an extra $1,250 a month. She doesn't have an extra $1,250 a month. This Prime Minister is just not worth the cost. So when will he stop his inflationary spending so Canadians like Lindsay can keep their home?
Secrétaire parlementaire.
Mr. Speaker, last week I had the opportunity to visit Peterborough, that member's riding, where I announced $42 million for the construction or renovation of over 1,100 units of housing. You know what's interesting, Mr. Speaker? Wow. That member voted against every program that made that funding possible, Mr. Speaker, and then she tried to take credit for it. It's astounding what the Conservatives continue to do. What Canadians need is a government to be behind them, to see more construction built, to see the Canada Child Benefit continue to have an effect. Dental care, child care, they're against all of those, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Calgary-Mindeford.
Mr. Speaker, after 8 years of this Liberal government, the deficit continues to rise. In March, the finance minister said that this year the deficit was going to be $40 billion. Well, the parliamentary budget officer just told us that she was off by at least $6 billion. Wow. Earlier this month in a Senate committee, finance officials couldn't even say what the Liberal NDP government is spending on debt interest charges. This Prime Minister simply isn't worth the cost. So when will this Prime Minister come up with a plan to balance the budget so Canadians can keep their homes?
Mr. Speaker, I find it highly shocking that Albertans from the Conservative Party in this House are absolutely silent on a matter that really affects the middle class in Alberta. Mr. Speaker, we're talking about the government of Alberta trying to take Alberta pensioners out of the Canadian pension plan, destabilizing the pension plan for Canadians from coast to coast to coast. They talk a big game in this chamber, Mr. Speaker, but when it comes to actually defending Albertans, they sit on the sidelines while we have their backs.
Do you believe this? Do you believe this? Why is it okay for Quebec to have its own pension plan that's wrong for Alberta? What a joke. The Liberals have been using the Canada pension plan as discretionary spending for decades. There's nothing safe or sacrosanct about the Canada pension plan. This guy's a joke.
After years of inflationary spending, the Prime Minister has literally killed the dream of young Quebecers to become homeowners.
Anyway, but you believe that? It's okay for Quebec to have its pension plan. But somehow if Alberta has one or any other province has one, that's going to be devastating and a nightmare. If we looked at the Canada pension plan right now and saw what kind of figures are in it, there wouldn't be anything there. I heard somebody yesterday describe the U.S. pension plan as a Ponzi scheme. That's exactly what the CPP is. It's a Ponzi scheme.
Implementation of measures that will help build more apartments, more homes throughout the country. We have a bill before this House, and the Conservatives, even those who said publicly they'd vote for it, well, they don't want it to move forward. We're being slowed down, and we can't deliver because the Conservatives are delaying a bill in this House, and it's shameful.
This is the level of discussion in this is unbelievable.
Should have called so that we could discuss it. They're the ones who are delaying passage of this bill after 8 years of the consequences of Liberal action are disastrous. In Quebec, inflation is the highest in the country, nearly 5% for the 4th month in a row. Like all parents in Quebec, I'm worried for my children's future. They're going to be facing the highest interest rates in the last 40 years. Food is too expensive, rent is unaffordable, and interest rates are skyrocketing. When will they stop mortgaging the future of our children?
Then I have ministre.
The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We know the Conservatives love to claim that they can give us lessons in economics, but the last time they were in power, not only did they leave behind a mess for Liberals to clean up,
This is the woman who's going to be
they
introducing the
cut
next
in
censorship
pensions,
bill very, very
they cut in
soon.
EI, they cut in border security, the army, federal prisons rather, in science and research.
What the hell was that?
Here, we support economic growth, but the
Versatile
Conservatives are
fetters?
only good for axing. They're not so good at calculating.
Then I have Député de Vancouver Est.
Trudeau is
The city
absent
of
without
Toronto
leave
and
again.
housing advocates warn
Ken,
that
he's
unhoused
absent
people
without leave.
will die as the weather gets colder. Toronto's shelter system, the largest in Canada, is beyond capacity. Hundreds of people being turned away every day, including refugees and asylum seekers. Successive Liberal and Conservative governments walked away from housing and left the city scrambling to house people in need. Toronto is pleading for support. Will the Liberals step up and provide the funding required to the City of Toronto so that no one has to sleep or die on the streets this winter?
Then I have Secrétaire parlementaire.
Mr. Speaker, I've worked with that member for a number of years now, and I don't doubt for a moment her commitment to housing. And she knows, because she voted for it, that we doubled the funding for.
You notice how they always talk very nicely to the NDP? She just loves that member. They love working with them, and they love looking forward to working with them in the future because they need their support propping up this corrupt government, and the NDP are all in it together with the Liberals. This is a massive farce. Massive.
Then I have Député de Port Moody Coquitlam.
Mr. Speaker, homelessness in Coquitlam, Port Coquitlam, and Port Moody is up by 86%. Community leaders from the Tri-Cities Homeless and Housing Task Group are calling for political courage. I agree. People unable to find a home is past the point of a crisis, and with colder weather on its way, action is needed. But the Liberals are out of touch, and their lack of concern is appalling. What are the Liberals going to do to get people into affordable homes before the winter?
Even if they got into affordable homes, they're going to shut off the heat. So people are still going to freeze whether they're inside or out.
Was the first government in Canadian history, in fact, to recognize that there is a human right to housing. And we continue to act in that vein through the National Housing Strategy, a strategy that has resulted in 70,000 people being taken off the street, 122,000 people who were very close to being homeless, no longer in that position because of the vital supports that they've been given. They are now housed. We'll continue to do everything we can, and we embrace partnership through working with provinces, municipalities, and I emphasize not-for-profit organizations that are key to all of this. Good job.
Then I have Député de King's Head.
Speaker, our government is focused on helping Atlantic Canada drive the tremendous economic
Here comes
opportunities
the
that exist for
softball.
clean energy in our
The
region.
softball law.
That's exactly
Thank
why
you,
we advanced
Cody.
Bill C-49 in close partnership with Newfoundland, Labrador, and Nova Scotia. We also have a mutual goal of getting
Cody.
off coal-fired electricity while expanding clean energy grids. Premier
Can
Higgs and
the
Houston were
great
both in Ottawa
minister
this
tell
week
us how
to
wonderful
talk about
he is?
their provincial plans to do just that. Can the Minister of Energy and Natural Resources explain how our government is working in cooperation with Nova Scotia and New Brunswick to support that crucial transition while being mindful of affordability? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yeah.
Then I have ministre.
Thank you to the member for his continuous advocacy for Atlantic Canadians.
Thank
He
you
and
for
his
that question.
Atlantic Liberal colleagues stood up against the Conservatives who opposed Bill C-49, including Conservative members from Atlantic Canada, whose communities will benefit from the good, sustainable jobs and economic opportunities that this act will bring.
Oh, yeah.
This week, Canada, Nova Scotia, and New Brunswick agreed to advance collaboration and progress on delivering clean, affordable, and reliable electricity while phasing out coal by 2030, driving to net zero electricity grid by 2035.
And
This
we're
will
all
fight
going to
climate
starve
change
and
create
freeze in
good
the
jobs
process.
and
How
economic
stupid do they
opportunity
think people
across
are?
Atlantic Canada.
Going to arrive at this net zero, which means live in a cave.
Wellington, Halton Hills.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday the State Department updated their travel advisory to Lebanon to the highest level, advising all U.S. citizens of the following: do not travel to Lebanon. But the government's overall travel advisory for Lebanon advises Canadian citizens to avoid non-essential travel, which is not the highest level. Why is this government always a dollar short and a day late when it comes to protecting the safety and security of Canadians overseas?
Secrétaire parlementaire.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I would disagree with the
Is there a
honourable
minister
member.
in the
We are
House today,
never late protecting
except the
Canadians.
really
We will
bizarre
always
ones? Or?
stand up for the security and safety of Canadians here in Canada and abroad. As the
Where are all
Speaker
the
knows,
ministers today?
yesterday the
Have you noticed
indicated that Canadians in
50%
Lebanon
of the
should
time
make plans
it's parliamentary
to leave.
secretaries getting up
We
today? It
are
means all the
aware that
ministers are out of town.
situation
What are they up to? What are they hiding from? Clearly, this is a government in disarray, in disorder, in chaos,
So she has advised Canadians to leave the
and
area.
in
Thank you, Mr.
decline, if
Speaker.
that's possible.
Honorable député de Wellington, Halton Hills.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the government has been late. It was late in the fall of Kabul in August of 2021. Has the government not learned the lessons of 2006 and 2021 of Beirut and Kabul? Throughout the Middle East and North Africa, there has been an outbreak of protests and violence targeting Western interests and Western missions. Will the government clearly communicate to Canadians information necessary to ensure their safety and inform Canadians about security threats they are facing in the region in a timely manner?
Le secrétaire parlementaire.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And yes, Mr. Speaker, we have, and we will continue to. These decisions are made by officials on the best advice. We will continue. We will continue, as we always do, to ensure that Canadians are safe when they are abroad. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Bellechasse-les-Etchemins-Lévis. Mr. Speaker, 8 years of inflationary Liberal policies have forced Quebecers deeper into debt. We learned today that Quebec is Canada's inflation champion for the 4th month in a row. Groceries, housing, gas, everything's more expensive, courtesy of the Liberals with Bloc support. And the experts don't see any change anytime soon. Can this government finally offer Quebecers some concrete solutions and quit their reckless spending and get rid of the carbon tax? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm always surprised that there are Conservatives from Quebec talking about the carbon tax because, Mr. Speaker, there is no carbon tax, no federal carbon tax.
All right. This is interesting because Freeland's not there, Joly is not there, Trudeau's not there, and a lot of other significant cabinet ministers, as insignificant as they are as human beings, but they're not there. What is going on today? This is clearly a government in flight.
Liberal policies have forced Quebecers deeper into debt. Young people are afraid they'll never be able to own a home. Others are suffering from financial anxiety. In spite of this, the government and the Bloc are supporting an increase to the carbon tax. We can't say it often enough. A vote for the Bloc will cost you. Why doesn't the Prime Minister give Quebecers a break and backtrack on his inflationary carbon tax?
The
Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, my colleague talks about cutting, but where? In housing? Is there too much money going to housing?
Oh, not
Is it
Pablo.
pensions? Does she think our seniors are getting too much money? Is it dental care? Is it child care? Perhaps culture? Because they're so happy to make cuts in those areas. Which would they choose? They should stand up and say where they're going to make the cuts. The honourable member for Shefford.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberals committed a terrible injustice when they created two classes of seniors by refusing to increase the OAS for 65 to 74-year-olds. Today, they have a historic opportunity to fix it. They can treat all seniors fairly in the face of a soaring cost of living and economic uncertainty. Will they support the bloc's bill, C319, and put an end to two classes of seniors by increasing pensions for everyone 65 and over? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, we've made huge progress in helping seniors out. This has helped reduce poverty among those 65 and over. We restored the retirement age to 65. We increased the GIS, despite the constant opposition from the bloc. And yes, we increased the OAS for the most vulnerable seniors. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member for Shefford. Mr. Speaker, that's not right. If seniors were satisfied with the federal government, groups that represent them like the AREQ, the AQRP, and the AFES wouldn't be on the Hill today. They're here to ask the government to support C319. Seniors are the ones telling us that C319 will make a difference in their lives. They're the ones saying that only a fair pension increase for all seniors will protect them from financial insecurity. That's what seniors want from the Liberals. Will they finally listen and support the bill? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, we restored
It's Mr.
the
Blarney
retirement
again.
age. We brought it back down
Seamus
from 67 to
Reagan.
65. We increased the GIS. And we did this in spite of the bloc's opposition. We increased the OAS for those seniors that are the most vulnerable and for those with in need of dental care and other care. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Deputy Abbotsford. Today, this House will vote on whether to protect the mentally ill against assisted suicide. But yesterday, the Justice Minister falsely claimed that euthanizing vulnerable Canadians was good public policy and the only way to comply with Canadian law. Meanwhile, we're hearing more and more reports of Canadians crying out for help and being offered assisted suicide instead. Is this the sorry state of our mental health system? Millions of Canadians oppose this government's fascination with assisted death. Will this government now bring a full stop to this madness?
Let's hear what he says about this. Because this policy is Nazi. It's a Nazi policy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And of course, there is not one among us in this House that doesn't have people that we love that are deeply vulnerable, that have been in a state of mental health crisis. And every single person in this House wants to make sure that those people get the support and strength they need. That's why we're making critical investments there.
That's why we're advising people to kill
Who
themselves.
are trapped in mental illness and in deep, profound suffering, that we examine what's the best way to deal with those circumstances. That's why we're working to reconstitute the Joint Committee so that we can look at this process, look at how we responsibly deal with these issues in a way that respects and protects vulnerable people.
No answer.
Each year on November 11th,
All
we
right.
gather to remember those who have made the ultimate sacrifice in defense of our nation. But now, under this Liberal government, our military chaplains are being told they can't even pray for the fallen. During World War II, chaplains
You're
led prayer
kidding.
on the boats on the eve of the D-Day landings. And chaplains have provided last rites to dying soldiers in the fields. But now, the Prime Minister is telling Canadians that on Remembrance Day, they can't even pray for those who fought for our country? What is going on, Mr. Speaker? Here, here.
What is going on here? This is news to me.
Stephen.
Oh, we mustn't say that.
L'honorable secrétaire parlementaire.
Monsieur le Président, écoutez, aujourd'hui...
Mr. Speaker.
No Veterans Affairs Minister. No
I'd like to
Defense
give
Minister.
a shout out to our veterans and all
No,
those who
still
served our
veterans
country.
you admire of Nazis.
Everyone, to all these people, we need to say thank you. Thank you to the men and women
What about
who,
prayers?
particularly at this point in time, are
Get that
defending what we
Canadian
do. And
flag
November
off you.
11th, as it is for many of my friends and colleagues here, on November 11th, we will remember and we will never forget everything our veterans have done for us. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
What a joke. Okay, okay. So we're not allowed to pray during Remembrance Day ceremonies anymore?
Député de Selkirk Interlake Eastman.
What if the prayer is the same? Would
Liberals
that
are
be okay?
discriminating against people of faith who are wanting to pay tribute to our veterans. And it's bad Liberal policy that is actually driving down morale in the Canadian Armed Forces. It was reported that troops are leaving the forces in droves because of the lack of good, affordable housing. And sadly, military families are being forced to ask for donations to help offset the high cost of food and housing. After 8 long years, the troops can no longer afford these Liberals or will make that sacrifice. When will the Prime Minister finally start supporting our troops? Hear, hear. Hear, hear.
When hell freezes over?
L'honorable secrétaire parlementaire.
Monsieur le Président,
There she is again.
I'll take
Get
any
that
lessons
flag
today
off.
from this side of the House. Because you know what, Mr. President? When
What
they
a
were in
joke. Get that
power,
flag off
they
because you're not
actually
standing for
cut
Canada.
spending fall below 1%.
Get the
Let me be
flag
very
off of you.
clear. Military members and their families are our top priorities. And we're
They're your
taking
last
steps to ensure
priority.
that they are supported. In our budget 2022, we've invested $55 million
Oh,
in
get off it.
residential housing for CAF. We will be there for our troop. We will always to support them, Mr. Speaker.
You are a moron. I gotta make a comment here. I'm ex-military. I've got to
Because
make
the
a
parliamentary
comment.
secretary was close to me, I was able to hear her answer. I'm not certain if
Oh,
other members
isn't that
were able to
nice
hear
for you,
this
Greg?
clearly. I do, colleagues.
Well, listen to this
I
half-wit
do
for a
ask
second
you
here.
to please cede the floor to the person who's been recognized by the chair to be able to answer the question so that you can answer it. You can ask again. The honourable member from Madawaska Ristigouche.
Merci, Monsieur le
All right,
Président.
I'm going to shut this off for a second. Because I tell you, this is absolutely outrageous. They can't even get a minister to stand up and defend our troops. We've got some woman there with a Canadian flag scarf around her neck, as if that means anything, telling how much this government is concerned about veterans, even though their current serving members are leaving in droves because they can't afford the cost of living. They care nothing for veterans. They care a lot for Ukrainian Canadian veterans of the 14th Waffen-SS division. They care a lot about those people. In fact, they'll meet with them privately and they'll invite them to speeches by Volodymyr Zelensky when he addresses joint sessions of parliament. They really like those kind of veterans. That's the kind of veterans Liberals love. And they will then deny they even met with them, then deny they knew it was coming, and then deny they knew anything about it, and blame it all on the past speaker. When it becomes public knowledge and a huge universal embarrassment. These Liberals just make you choke. They make you want to throw up. I can't put it any more viscerally than that. They make you physically sick to your stomach because of their lies and their hypocrisy. They've all become like Justin Trudeau, who is the embodiment of mendacity and hypocrisy.
Mr. Speaker, no one is above the law. This includes the Prime Minister. And
This is
after
good.
8 years, he is the only one in Canadian history found guilty of breaking not one, but 2 ethics laws. And now with the Rise scam, the RCMP is investigating criminality in the highest echelons of this government. And what is the Prime Minister's response? He shuts down debate. He shuts down committee, and now he hides behind cabinet confidence. He is not worth the cost. Under dark clouds of suspicion, will the Prime Minister cooperate now with several RCMP investigations?
No, it won't. Cooperate? It controls the RCMP.
Secretary Parlementaire.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And as the member opposite should know by this
Oh,
time, the
no.
Prime Minister does not dictate committees.
The Prime
In
Minister's
fact,
out of
it is
town
the
again.
responsibility of members in this
Another
House to
parliamentary
determine
secretary.
what the committees decide to move forward with. But with that being said, Mr. Speaker, we have faith and trust in the RCMP and those that are set to investigate any accusations of
Of course you
wrongdoing.
have faith in
Mr.
them. They're
Speaker,
following your
we
orders.
look forward to any reports that come forward from the RCMP. And Mr. Speaker, any form of misconduct will have consequences.
Does it concern you all listening today that the country is being run by idiots like this? It is very alarming.
From Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, and Rideau Lakes.
Well, Speaker, Canadians would love for reports to come from the RCMP, but this Prime Minister is hiding behind cabinet confidences in the NDP Liberal coalition to keep Canadians in the dark about wrongdoing. That's why they weren't able to launch that criminal investigation into this government. And if you can believe it, there's a $1 billion so-called green slush fund that through misappropriation and conflicts of interest, this government has had to suspend because there's 150 million taxpayer dollars that have been mismanaged. Now, whistleblowers are looking for employment and reprisal protection, but we know that this government will do what they always do and throw a whistleblower under the bus, just like they did with Jody Wilson-Raybould when she called out corrupt Liberals. Will they protect these whistleblowers?
They're deliberately shutting the sound off so you can't hear the MPs cause an uproar. You noticed this today. This is deliberately shutting the sound off.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the member for the question. And for Canadians watching at home, remember to this House what are the facts. The moment, Mr. Speaker, that we heard about
He's one of the few ministers there today. This guy is a complete incompetent.
Third-party independent expert to
But he's
investigate these allegations.
president.
They reported back to me, and Mr. Speaker, we have suspended in good governance the funds that would be disbursed to protect the interest of Canadians, and I can assure this member that we'll take all measures required to make sure that proper governance is applied in all agencies of the Government of Canada.
Not true, though. PSPC knew in advance.
Honorable Député de Yellowhead.
Mr. Speaker, the Supreme Court has declared the Liberal No More Pipelines Act unconstitutional. Ignoring concerns from Canadians, the Prime Minister and his Minister for Carbon Taxes seemed hell-bent on destroying our natural resource sector. After 8 years of this Prime Minister's anti-resource agenda, Canadians are suffering. Common sense Conservatives will advocate for our natural resource sector. This Prime Minister is just not worth the cost. Mr. Speaker, when will this NDP Liberal government
That is really an ineffective slogan. It's not worth the cost. Is that the best they can come up with? I'm glad I'm not selling that talking point for them. This Prime Minister is destroying our freedom.
The Conservative Party was in
Forget
power,
not
they
worth
gutted
the cost.
environmental
This is a
legislation that existed in this
disaster.
country in 2012. They undermined the confidence that Canadians had.
Oh, the Conservatives never know how to go
the rights of
for the
Indigenous
jugular when they have to.
would be respected, such that good projects could go ahead. We have put into place a system of better rules that ensure environmental sustainability, respect for Indigenous rights, that will accelerate the work that we are doing to ensure that good projects move ahead. With respect to the Supreme Court decision, there are some surgical tweaks that
Just
we will make.
stringing together a lot of meaningless phrases. They are messing with the sound.
From Winnipeg South Centre.
Mr. Speaker, Jews in Canada represent just 1% of the population. Yet, as Irwin Collar reminds us, they are victims of 67% of reported hate crimes in Canada. Anti-Semitism is on the rise, and Mr. Speaker, Islamophobia is too. I met with Jewish students yesterday who are afraid to be outed as Jews in their own community for fear of their safety. I've spoken with Muslims who are afraid to be outed as Muslims in their own communities for fear of their safety.
Probably because Justin Trudeau's after them.
Let us know what role the government is playing in addressing the real anxieties of Jews and Muslims in Canada right now. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I first want to acknowledge just how difficult the past few days and weeks have been, both for the Jewish and Muslim communities. And I want them to know that all of us here stand with and in solidarity with the communities. On Monday, Mr. Speaker, we announced the appointment of Ms. Deborah Lyons as Canada's Special Envoy on preserving Holocaust remembrance and combating anti-Semitism. And as she stated, Mr. Speaker, she will work closely with her counterpart, the Special Envoy on combating Islamophobia, to support both communities during this difficult time when feelings of anxiety, tensions, and fear are on the rise, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, diversity is at the core of who we are as Canadians. We all need to be united in standing up against hate and intolerance whenever.
The only diversity the Liberals respect is the LGBTQ kind, because Muslims and Jews and Christians and Hindus are increasingly opposed to his gender ideology and his euthanasia and his abortion and his other policies that are killing, literally killing Canadians. Never mind the censorship. We've got two phases that have been passed already by the House, C11, C18. The next bill is coming in this session. It's going to be the online safety bill. I'm going to talk about this every bloody day because it is the most significant thing that Trudeau is going to do to destroy this country. He wants to take away your free speech. And that's what he aims to do with the online safety bill. And I can't listen to this. I can't listen to this woman. She is a joke, standing up there with her Canadian flag scarf, and how much they love veterans. This is a farce to listen to. It's too much to listen to. I ask again, though, where are all the primary ministers there? The key ministers are not in attendance today. They are doing something else. I wonder what that is, because they're running from something. I did have her muted. Oh, no. Oh, no. Yeah, Elizabeth May has got nothing to say at all, you know. Except if you're at a press club dinner and she's had a few drinks under her belt, then she has a lot to say, but it's all crap. So, but she's very verbose. I don't know who keeps sending her back, but some very unfortunate people keep sending her back. This guy is enough to make you just want to run to the bathroom. He's so arrogant, so arrogant.
Country that respected environmental rights, that respected the rights of Indigenous peoples. We have delivered that. We certainly respect the decision of the court. We will be making amendments to the act, but the Supreme Court was clear. Let me be very clear about this, that Parliament can enact legislation to protect the environment, and we certainly will continue to do that.
This brings to the end of oral questions. Colleagues, I wish to draw the attention of members to the presence of the gallery of Her
Oh, is there another
Excellency
Nazi there?
Lindita Nicola, Speaker of the Parliament of the Republic of Albania,
Not
accompanied by
today.
a parliamentary
They didn't
delegation.
invite a Nazi today. Well, time to get up and cheer, though. This is just such a farce. Anyway, thanks for watching today. A little longer than usual because we had the speaker coming down hard on any opponent of the Liberal government and warning that there's going to be repercussions on the way. So it has been a pleasure talking about question period with you. I know it's painful. I used to have to be there every day in person, watching it, taking notes, and it is painful. But you have to acknowledge what's going on to your country. And it has been hijacked by a bunch of people who have no understanding of what. I'm just listening for a sec. All right. Anyway, so thanks again for watching, and please get to know what the online safety bill is, because it's the part 3 of Trudeau's censorship legislation that is coming our way. It's going to be aimed at people like myself, independent broadcasters, new media, which also includes me. I work for new media. But basically, it's also going to be aimed at everybody who works in journalism, because it's all online now. And it's a censorship bill because it's going to outlaw disinformation. It's going to penalize disinformation. And the bill won't even talk about what disinformation is. It won't define disinformation because, as study groups have told them, don't define disinformation in this bill because that will make it harder to enforce if you do that. So they are intentionally not going to define disinformation. So it will be up to the Liberal government to decide what disinformation is. And that can literally be anything they don't like. And people think I'm kidding sometimes, but this bill is coming. It's already been passed in Australia, and it's already been passed in Great Britain just recently. And journalists will be arrested for disinformation, misinformation, and malinformation. You never heard of that last one? Malinformation can be just about anything that is unpleasant. So, yeah, we're living in Orwell's 1984. But as Orwell said, it's up to you to stop it. And that's what we have to do. And if this Liberal NDP coalition collapses in the near future, that would be the best solution, because we need to get rid of Trudeau. We need to get rid of this Liberal government before it does further damage to this country, not just economically, but to the very fabric of our democracy. It's tearing up free speech. It's already torn up freedom of assembly. That's what the Freedom Convoy trial is about, to scare the hell out of people so they never want to protest again, at least against the Liberal government. You can protest other things. You can be an environmental extremist. You can be other things, but don't protest Liberal policies, and don't protest COVID-19 mandates, or you're going to end up on trial. So that's the lesson of this Freedom Convoy trial, and that's why we have to get rid of this Trudeau government sooner rather than later. Thanks everybody for watching today. I really appreciate your comments. Keep them coming, and I've tried to respond as we've been on the air here, because I appreciate the fact that you're thinking about things and you're asking me questions and you're making very good points. And you see through this nonsense. You see through the hypocrisy. You see through this garbage. A lot of people can't. They really take this seriously, and it's not. It's a farce. Thanks for watching today. I'll see you soon. Keep watching. Stand on guard. We're on just about every day now.